Hello. This video has been designed for contact centre staff to enable them to use Eclipse. It looks specifically at your processes and how they work. Today we will look at how to search in Eclipse, how to add a new client and update their record, how to add a new non-client, for example a carer or household member, add relationships, the initial contact work list and how to trigger the follow-on work lists, the message from contact centre work list which replaces activities, case notes, the replacement for observations, and how to upload documents to Eclipse. You will first need to log into the training version of Eclipse. You need to use either Microsoft Edge or Chrome. It is important to note that certain items do not work if you try to use Internet Explorer. Once you've opened your browser, you need to type the URL into the address bar. This is at the very top of the screen. Please do not use the search bar. The login screen for the test environment looks like this. If yours looks different, then it is not the right page. Please check you have typed the correct URL into the address bar. Your login and password will be provided to you. Once you have logged in, you'll see My Summary screen, which looks like this. At the top, we have our name. Today I am Train 1 in the live environment. That will be your name and your unique person number, which replaces your CareFirst 6 ID. At the top, we have our search facility, our recently accessed records, and then we have the teams or clipboards. So if you are in more than one team, you will be able to swap whichever team you're in from here. Here again, we see our name here, and this is where we can change our password or change our notification settings. So adults have chosen not to use the option for SMS, but you can select whether to receive notifications via email or just within Eclipse itself. You can also choose whether it's in your cases or also your team members' cases. We then have again a summary of the teams that we are part of, and today we can see that the training team has one overdue piece of work for one client. We then have My Tasks, which is where your work, as any work, will be found here. So we have work that's on time, work that's still on time but is nearly overdue, and work that is late. And we also have our team's tasks as well. So to search for somebody in Eclipse, we can either start typing their name or user ID in here if we know it. We can select a person, or we can search for an organisation, such as a GP practice. Adults have chosen not to use groups. It automatically defaults to person, and if you start typing in a name, you will start seeing information appear. I've typed John, so I get people whose first names are John, people who have other forenames of John, and also the surname John. If I then start to type in the rest of the name, we get some different results. And if I click on Show All, we can see we have people who also have the surname Smith, as well as the surname John. So as in a lot of search facilities, the more you type, the more information you get. You can also show your criteria, and you can clear your criteria. And this is what the advanced search looks like. You can also access the advanced search from here. And here we can search by gender, by name or ID, which is the Eclipse ID. When they were born, or if they're aged between a specific age. So if they were 55, we could search between people who were 54 and 56. If we know an NHS number, we can search for that. Or we can search for reference numbers, which includes the CareFirst 6 ID. So if you know someone's CareFirst 6, you can put it in here and search for it. You can also search by address. It is good practice to do more than one search before identifying whether someone is on Eclipse or not. We would suggest you do a minimum of 3 different criteria, so a name, an address and a date of birth, for example. And only when you are completely convinced that a person is not on Eclipse. So if a person has changed their name by marriage, if someone has moved house, or the date of birth has been added incorrectly, if 2 of the 3 criteria match, we would suggest that you would identify that as the same person. However, I have done some searches and I know that the person is not on Eclipse and I need to add them. There are 2 places we can add people in Eclipse, and the first one is from our home page. We click on allocation. This is where social workers will find their allocated clients, but we would not expect the contact centre to have anybody in here. You can also see you can access your recently accessed clients. We can now see we have this blue add person button. When we add a person, it will automatically default to a client. Where you see this asterisk, it denotes a mandatory field. So we can see we need both the forename, the surname, when they were born, a gender and ethnicity. I type in his name. If I'm not sure exactly what the date of birth is, I can also add an age and it will give me a year of birth. This can be amended later. So if you only identify an age, that's fine. For the gender, if you select a gender specific title, a gender will automatically be completed. If you pick a non-gender specific title, such as Doctor or MX, it won't. But we need to select a gender and we need to select an ethnicity. You can select not known if appropriate. If you know the NHS number, you can add it here. The CHI number relates to the Scottish Health Service, and wherever you see this in Eclipse, you can ignore it. Select next. We're now asked about creating a professional relationship to this person. Within the contact centre, we wouldn't expect you to do this, and you would just skip creation of professional relationship and press save. We now have our person. We can see we have their name and their unique person ID and the information that we added. It does look like you can change the name here, but if you hover over the question mark, you can see that you should only use this to change the name if someone has legally changed their name by marriage or deed poll. If you have added a name incorrectly, you have misspelt it or not capitalised it, you will need to use this blue edit button here. So if we click on this, we can update the person information. If we know a title, we can add it. If they had other forenames, a middle name, we can add that here. A display name. So this is something where someone would use a different part of their legal name, for example, a middle name, and this would be displayed throughout Eclipse and used for letters, etc. However, if they had another name, an alias, that they may phone up and say, hello, my name is Bob Test, but their name is Terry, you can add that in here so that when you search for them, you will still find them. If we now know the date of birth, we can add that now. And if we weren't clear on a gender or someone had a different gender identity, for example, non-binary, we can put that in here. However, my client today has got a gender identity of male. We can pick sexual orientation, a religion, a country of birth, and again, we have the opportunity to add an NHS number if we know it. And we press on save. Throughout the person details page, you will see there are a number of sections and you can open and close them using the arrows next to them. We need to add an address. There are no addresses, so my only option is to select add. The first option is for location not known, and we would only use this if we didn't know where someone lived or they had no fixed abode or they lived out of area. If they do live within Birmingham, then we can search for their address here. You can do this either by adding the first part of a postcode and a house number, or you can add the whole postcode if you know it. If you don't know the house number but whole postcode, you will get all of the options available to you here. It's important to note that all addresses within the UK are available within Eclipse. You don't need to go and ask for it to be added to the system as you did previously. The only time this wouldn't be the case is if it was a brand new build, and then you would email and ask for it to be added. We do have to select a type and a usage. They are mandatory. If we wanted more details, a room or a floor, we can, but they aren't mandatory. We need to add a start date. Within the contact centre, we would expect you to select the current date. This can be amended later. You also see this do not disclose box, and this would be in circumstances, for example, of safeguarding or domestic violence, where we don't want the address of the individual to be disclosed to anybody. And when I click on save, we can now see that the address has appeared and we have this red circle with do not disclose. This is also at the top of the page, and this will carry on. We will always see this at the top, no matter what page within Eclipse we are. We now have some other options for the address. We can end it, we can move them, and we can update address dates. So it can be updated at a later date quite easily. Next, we have contact details. This is where we add telephone numbers or email addresses. You can see the only mandatory fields are the contact type and a number. You can, however, choose whether it's a landline or a mobile, etc. Is it a home, emergency or work number? And is it a permanent or temporary? So if you had someone who was in a temporary placement, you could select that that was a temporary telephone number. It's important to note that if you type any text into the number field and try to save it, you will get an error message. You need to only type telephone numbers into this field, and there should be telephone numbers that relate directly to the individual and not to anybody else. You can add as many telephone numbers as are appropriate. Reference numbers, so this is where we add in any passport numbers, key safe numbers, national insurance numbers, etc. And it's where we will also find a Care First 6 number if the person has been migrated from Care First. Next, we come to languages. So unlike previously with Care First, where they sat within classifications, languages have their own section in Eclipse. We click on the Add button. It's important to note we only have 2 mandatory fields here, which are first language and proficiency in English. But however, if someone's first language is English, the proficiency no longer becomes mandatory. If they do speak any other languages, we can add them here. And we can also add any non-verbal communication needs that the person has. Press save. We do not edit education. This relates to children's. And the physical items are those physical files that we hold for a person. And if there were any that you needed to locate, they would be listed here. Across the top, we have these 4 buttons. So alerts are pieces of information that we can add for an individual. Warnings can only be added by a manager or senior prac, but can be viewed by everybody. Templates are a way of printing information, and here is the second place where we can add people to Eclipse. So I'm going to add an alert for my individual for a contact preference to call the partner first and press save. We can now see we have a yellow lozenge that we hover over and it tells us to contact the partner first. I'm now going to add a new person that's a carer or family member or household member. As you can see, with this type of person, we only have to add the forename and the surname for the individual. But I would suggest that if you can find out the age of the person and add their gender, it would be useful. Again, we would skip the creation of professional relationship and press save. And here is our other person. Ready to go. I'm going to create a relationship. So I'm going to go back to Terry and add the relationships from him. So I click on the relationships button from the left-hand menu. And on the far right, again, we have an add button. And when you hover over it, it does say add relationship. When you click on that, you have a number of options. It defaults to familial, but you could pick social, professional, organisational or team. So a professional may well be a GP, but we're going to stick to familial for today. We need to start typing in the name of the person we're looking for. And then we need to pick the type of relationship. You'll see then that the date will automatically default to the date of birth to the youngest person in the relationship. Unlike Care First, where you had to create a number of different relationships for different types of information, for example, next of kin, carer or financial representative, we no longer have to do that. We have these attributes here. So I can say that Helen is Terry's carer and she is his financial representative, and press save. We can now see that we have this relationship here and we have these grey circles to tell us who they are. Obviously, I had searched Eclipse and found that this person wasn't on Eclipse before I added them, but I also have a partner for this person and I know that they do exist already in Eclipse. And this is their partner, it's their wife. We can see that a start date does not appear because it is not a blood relationship. If you don't know, you can default it to today, or you can pick a different date. Again, we can pick relationship attributes for both parties. So here we have a wife and a daughter with relationships. The wife is the next of kin, but the daughter is the carer and the financial representative. You can also view these in a graph where we can see the dividing area is the generations between them. Now, previously I added this lozenge that said we needed to call the partner first. If we click on the name, we now see we have the person summary screen and we have our yellow lozenge. And here is the partner and here is the partner's telephone number. So you can identify who you need to call from the person summary screen. And you get between them by just clicking on the name, and that will flick between person details and person summary. We're now going to look at the work lists. The first work list we're going to look at is the initial contact. It's important to remember that when you're using Eclipse, you do not add forms to the record, you add a work list. So we click on the work list from the left-hand menu. Currently there are none because it's a new person that we've created, so we need to add a new work list. In the live environment, the contact centre will only have the options of initial contact, message from contact centre and a safeguarding work list. But for today, within the test environment, if I use the filter and I start typing in the name of the work list that I need, we can see that with only 3 characters, I've found the initial contact. And I add the work list. This is what a work list looks like. It is a to-do list and we need to add the form and complete the form. Obviously, we have to add the form first, so we click on this task and add the form. Forms within Eclipse sit in a separate window on their own, which I can move about. And if I needed to look at something within Eclipse, I can do so without having to close the form. If the form doesn't open for you like this, it is because you have pop-up blockers enabled, and you will have a message up here which will allow you to disable them. If you choose to keep pop-up blockers enabled, you will need to click on the words initial contact on the form screen to open the form. This is what a form looks like in Eclipse. We have the name of our person and their unique person ID. We're told the name of the form and a form ID. Across here we can exit the form and we can also exit and complete when we've finished the form. Down the left hand side we have a contents menu. We can see the sections of the form that we need to complete, And we can also have these orange triangles which denote mandatory fields that we need to complete within each section. To start completing a form, we click on the word edit. Whenever you're in a section that you're editing, you will see that it is slightly raised above the rest of them. There's a shadow underneath to denote that's the section you're in. And you will see these three options: save, save and next, and cancel. So if I click on cancel, it simply closes the section that I'm in and it doesn't save anything. If I try to save a section that has mandatory fields within it, I'm unable to do so because they are blank. However, if I complete those sections, which is, are you adding this initial contact following notification to assess from a hospital? I'm going to say no. We need to put in the date by double clicking in the field, and also who is contacted. So I'm going to say it's a self-referral. If I now press save, I've saved that section, but it hasn't opened any of the other sections in the form. I can exit the form and go away, have my lunch, whatever I need to do, and come back. It's important to remember within Eclipse that it varies the answers to the questions depending on what you've put in. So if I pick a third-party referral, for example, I get some more questions to answer. If you see two questions that look the same like this is because the second point refers to the online form. You can see it isn't mandatory and you don't need to complete it. You'll also see these yellow squares of text which are prompts, and this is the prompt that if it was a third-party referral, that we add a relationship to the person that who has created this referral. However, for today we're going to do a self-referral, and we're going to pick the third option here in the middle, save and next. This saves the section that we've completed and opens up the next section. Again, if I select no for these questions, I am given more questions to answer. However, if I select yes, they disappear. We can see here that this section, although it contains text, is a mandatory field and we need to complete it. We have some blue guidance information, all of which should be familiar to you from Care First. If I click in here, we now see that we have some options. We can make things bold, we can italicize them, we can underline them. We can also create bullet points. And this also denotes the fact that you have no character limits within this text field. You can type as much as you require, which you weren't previously able to do in Care First. We need to select a category of need and also the nature of the inquiry. When you see boxes, it means that you can pick as many as are appropriate, but I'm only going to select additional care for today. We then have three other mandatory questions regarding reducing social isolation, about savings, and also, are the current conversation support plan or review work list for this person? If I say yes, and then press save and next, within the next steps, I'm only given the option here to send a message to the worker regarding conversations. I can still raise a safeguarding, an occupational therapy assessment, or a no recourse to public funds inquiry. However, if I select no, I now have the option to create a conversation 1 or 2 for the person. I can click in the box and then I can select a team that this form will be sent to, so a team clipboard. You don't have to remember all the different team numbers like you did previously. You can just start typing in the name of the team. As you can see, teams now have an org number, and if you wish to, you can type in the org number to identify the team that you want to use. Once you've selected a team, you'll see that it disappears. Don't worry. If I select a safeguarding concern, again, I have the option And if I start typing in safeguarding, I can see the teams related to safeguarding, and I can pick the appropriate team. If I pick an occupational therapy assessment, we don't have that option, and we will get more sections to complete in the form. We then have some more text fields, but they are not mandatory, and another prompt to make sure we've added language and communication needs for the individual. Save and next. We now have some mandatory reporting data. As you can see, this question has been automatically completed based on the answer to the question we gave previously, and we need to select a route of access. We would assume that generally it would be a self-funder or a community or other route that we would be selecting in the contact centre. Save and next. You now see that a new section of the form has been created. This is because we selected an occupational therapy form. We can select all three if appropriate. Save and next. We now have the occupational therapy questions, which you should all be familiar with because they're the same as in Care First. None of them are mandatory, so I'm just going to click on Save and Next. And then we have an outcome. What form do we want to trigger? And I shall say it's an OT specialist assessment, and press Save and Next. We can now see that no new sections of the form have opened, and we have no orange triangles in our contents, and this means that our form is complete. It's important to remember that once you have completed a form in Eclipse, you cannot edit it. If you are unsure about any sections or need to confirm any information, you may wish to exit the form. Everything that you've completed will be saved. It will just not be complete. You can go and discuss those issues before coming back to the form and selecting Exit and Complete. You are given 2 opportunities or 2 prompts to change your mind. And once you've completed the initial contact, we can see on the forms page, we have an initial contact with the state of complete because it has an orange circle with a tick in it. When we now go to work lists, we can see we have those forms that we have triggered and the teams that they have been assigned to. You'll see that the occupational therapy form is 50% complete, and this is because the form has already been automatically added to Eclipse. The next work list we're going to look at is the message from contact centre work list, which replaces activities. So where previously, if you would send an activity to a social worker, you will now send a message work list. So again, from the work list page, I click on the add button. My filter is still in place. If I click in the filter and take out that and start typing in message, you can see we now have the message from contact centre work list, and I will add that. Again, this has 2 tasks. I click on the top one and add the form. This is a much smaller work list and only has 2 sections. I click on edit. I need to add a date. I can add a time, but it isn't mandatory. And if you do, unfortunately, you have to type it in by hand with a colon between the hours and the minutes. We then have our details of contact and any follow-up actions taken. And our guidance tells us that this will create an automatic case note. Once we've put our information in, press Save and Next. We're then asked about our priority. Is it a standard or urgent? And do we want to send it to a worker or to a team? If we select team clipboard, again, like the initial contact, we can type in the name of the team. However, if we need to send it to a worker, we don't have that option, and we have a blue guidance notes telling us that we need to reassign the work list. And that's what we're going to do. If I press Save and Next, we know we've completed the form. No new sections, no orange triangles. Exit and Complete. We can now see that on the forms page, we have a message from contact centre with the orange circle to tell us that that is complete. On the work lists page, we now have a notification of message from contact centre, and I need to reassign this to the correct worker. To do that, under actions, I select the blue button and reassign work list. This opens up this option. I can reassign to an individual or a team. If it was for myself and it had been assigned to the wrong team, I can change the team for myself, or I can assign it to another person. Pick another person, and again, the team that they sit within for this piece of work, and then press save. We can now see that this notification is assigned to a different person within the training team. When I click on this message, there's only one task, and that's to complete it. And I view the form. And the social worker can edit this message section, although we would hope they wouldn't. They would simply click into edit here and type in their actions. They click on save and next, and then exit and complete. We can now see we have two forms here. We have the notification and the message from contact centre. So if I click on these, we can see that we have the two different forms. And they exist separately. So any information you have added or anything that you need is there, and you know that it won't be changed because it is a complete form. So what the message from contact centre does is it creates a case note, and that's what we're going to look at next. Case notes replace observations and can be found from the menu on the left hand side. We can see we have this automatic case note entry created by the message work list. And if I click on view here, we can see the type of work list, type of case note it is, and who created it. So this is always there through their information. If I need to add a new case note, I click on the blue add button. And this is what a case note looks like. I can select the current date or the current date and time. And I can pick an entry type. As again, this is the test environment, so there is a lot of options here that you won't have in live. And you will only see the drop-down options appropriate to the contact centre. Case notes also have unlimited numbers of characters, and you can edit them as you need. You can bold, capitalise, etc. You can also insert an image directly into the case note. So this is much like an attachment on an email, and upload it. Now this image sits within the case note, and if I save and complete this case note entry, completing a case note entry means it cannot change any of the text within it. We now see that it is a picture of a case recording, which isn't necessarily the most sensible way to do it, or it won't be searchable. The better way to do it is by attaching a document to it instead. So I can say and if I use this blue upload button here, I can choose the file type or choose the file again. As like attaching an email, we need to add a title and a description. There is a source organisation and a source. They're not mandatory, and in the test environment there isn't anything really there. And upload. If I save, then I can edit the text. If I complete, I can't. If I complete this again, we now have something that has a bit more information about it, and we can see that there's a file attached. If for some reason you'd forgotten to attach all of the images, that's fine. If you click on this button here and upload file to this entry, you can add more photos. So you can have one case note with a number of attachments to it rather than one case note plus one attachment. We can also attach documents to forms. As long as a form is not submitting and waiting for authorization, we can attach files to it. You can see here the paperclip, and if I select and upload a file, we get the same options. I can add a document, and this time this is a letter from the GP. So we're asking that the social worker calls relating to the letter received on the 10th of the 1st. And we can now see that this form has an attached document. If I click on that, it will tell me what it is. And if I select on select, I can download that file. All documents that we have attached can also be located here on the documents page. So outputs are creations of forms, so the PDF versions of forms that we get to send out to people. We also have case note attachments and form attachments. And if there are a large number, we can filter them using this. So this replaces e-records. So although current information will remain on e-records, anything new will be uploaded directly into Eclipse. If I now return to our person summary page, we can see that by creating that work list, we have created a classification because we said that they needed physical support, and we now have a chronology telling us that we received an initial contact. If we look at our classifications, we can see that that is there as well. That is the end of this training session. I hope this has been useful to you. If you have any further questions or need more information, please do not hesitate to speak to your Eclipse champion or to contact the team at the email address on your screen. Thank you.